Hello, welcome to Lesson 16.1C. I've entitled this video, The Clinton 90s. This video is going to cover pages 969 to 972. President Clinton turns toward the center. Bush faced a stiff re-election challenge in 1992. Recession and unemployment continued. Bickering between Congress and the president left voters unhappy with Washington politics. The Democratic nominee, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton, promised more government involvement in areas ignored by Reagan and Bush. Question 56. Why were voters unhappy with President George H.W. Bush by 1992? Well, the recession and the unemployment continuing and the bickering between Congress and President Bush led to their being very unhappy with how things were going. Question 57. Who were the three candidates running in the presidential election of 1992? Well, you had the Republican nominee, George H.W. Bush, running for re-election. You had the challenger for the Democratic Party, Bill Clinton. And then you had a third-party candidate, an independent, wealthy person named Ross Perot, who Mr. Morris voted for the first time he could vote in presidential elections. Good old Ross Perot. On Election Day, voters signaled their dissatisfaction. Only 38% voted for Bush. Although he received less than half the popular vote, 43%, Clinton won the highest number of votes. The remaining 19% went to Ross Perot, a Texas billionaire who ran as an independent candidate. So question 58, what was the result of the presidential election of 1992? Democrat Bill Clinton won the election of 1992. Just as a reminder why Mr. Morris voted for Ross Perot, way back in 1992, this wealthy billionaire Ross Perot took out half-hour ads on TV to do like these infomercials, and basically what he said back in 1992 is, listen, America, we can't continue to spend more money than we bring in. And so he was trying to address, even back in 1992, the problems that our federal deficit was going to cause our country. And that's why I voted for him, because I believed then, as I even more so too today, with our $20+ trillion of debt, that we can't keep running our country this way. Bill Clinton, however, was the winner. Feel free to pause the video at this time if you'd like to read this information about Bill Clinton. Improvements and setbacks. President Clinton followed a middle-of-the-road course. On the one hand, he moved cautiously when he persuaded Congress to increase some taxes and reduce spending. Yet, this caution brought success. Under Clinton, for the first time in over 40 years, the federal deficit began a steady decline. So you'll notice right here, when he took over in 1983, you can see how the federal budget started to decline under his reign, and then notice eventually he's going to have surplus. Amazing, but yes, we can actually do this in this country. We can actually make more money than we spend. That happened under President Clinton, and it hasn't happened since. On the other hand, Clinton pushed for bold reform of the healthcare system. In 1994, some 37 million Americans had no health insurance. Clinton called for a national system of health insurance for almost all Americans. After heated debate, however, Congress defeated the plan. Many Americans were worried that it would be too costly and involve the government too deeply in their lives. To many Americans, the struggle over health care showed that Washington was paralyzed. Democrats controlled both Congress and the White House, yet the president could not get his own plan enacted. So question number 59. Oh, let's go back to question 59. What steps did President Clinton take on the economy? He took a middle-of-the-road course. He did increase some taxes, but he also did some spending reductions. And question 60, what was President Clinton able to accomplish for the first time in over 40 years? He was able to get not only a balanced budget, but eventually we actually had a surplus. Question 61, the major changes he wanted to make to healthcare is he wanted to give the 37 million Americans that had no health insurance, he wanted to try to get them covered with a national system of health insurance. Question 62, what was the outcome of President Clinton's healthcare reform? It was a disaster. Even though he had both houses of Congress, they couldn't agree. Many Americans were worried it would be too costly and involve the government too much, and so the plan was defeated. Question 63, why were many Americans worried about President Clinton's healthcare plan? They worried it would be too costly and get too much involvement in the government into their lives. 64, why were many Americans frustrated with the Democratic Congress during President Clinton's first couple of years? Well, here he had the Democratic House, the Democratic Senate, and he was a Democratic president, and yet he couldn't get his program passed. So they're going to be like, if you can't get it done, we're going to pick the Republicans then. Expanding trade. During the term of President Bush, the United States had negotiated with Mexico and Canada to conclude the North American Free Trade Agreement known as NAFTA. Bush signed the agreement in October 1992, but he was unable to persuade Congress to ratify the agreement before he left the White House in January 1993. In the United States, opponents argued that, by allowing free trade with Mexico, where pay was much lower and there were fewer laws protecting the environment, the agreement would result in American jobs leaving the country. Among those opposing NAFTA were much of the labor movement. Many U.S. business leaders, however, supported NAFTA, arguing that it would open up markets for U.S. products. So question number 65. What plan did President Bush sign in October of 1992 but was unable to get Congress to ratify by the time he left office? NAFTA. 66. What does NAFTA stand for? North American Free Trade Agreement. 67. What were some of the arguments of those who opposed NAFTA? Well, people argued that in Mexico, the pay was lower and there were fewer laws protecting the environment. Therefore, they were worried that jobs would be outsourced or leave America and go to Mexico. Question 60, and so it would hurt American workers. 68. What was the main argument used by those who supported NAFTA? The people that supported NAFTA, which were the business leaders, they said, hey, it'll open up new markets for U.S. products. When Bush signed NAFTA in October 1992, he was in the midst of a presidential campaign against Bill Clinton. Clinton agreed to support NAFTA if provisions were added to the agreement protecting the environment and labor rights. Even after Canada and Mexico agreed to those changes, however, opponents of the agreement put up a fight. They believed the changes did not go far enough. In the end, though, Clinton convinced Congress to support the agreement. NAFTA took effect on January 1, 1994. It opened the markets of all three North American countries to the free movement of trade and investment across borders. After the agreement took effect, trade among the three countries increased dramatically. Question 69. What did Bill Clinton ask in return for agreeing to sign NAFTA? He wanted provisions to be added that would protect the environment and labor rights. Question 70. What impact did NAFTA have on Canada, Mexico, and the United States? Well, trade among the three countries did increase dramatically. An economic boom. After Clinton took office in 1993, the U.S. economy recovered strongly from recession. Continuing for 8 years, this was the longest uninterrupted period of economic growth in U.S. history. The economy's strong performance helped Clinton win re-election by a large margin in 1996. Historians disagree on the reasons for the boom. Some believe that Clinton's efforts to trim the federal budget deficit strengthened the economy. Others point to sharply lower energy prices. Still, others believe that economic growth was largely the result of using computers to make American workers more productive. So now we can do question 71. What economic fact made President Clinton very popular in the 1990s? Well, the U.S. economy continued for 8 years, the longest uninterrupted period of economic growth in United States history. It's the economy, stupid. When the economy is doing well, people are generally very happy with the president. When the economy is not doing well, people are generally not happy with the president. It's the economy, stupid. Question 71. What was the result of the presidential election in 1996? Bill Clinton was able to win re-election by a large margin. Question 73. Historians disagree on the reasons for the boom of the Clinton years. What are 3 possible explanations for why it did so well? Number 1, that we were trimming the federal budget deficit, and that strengthened our economy. Number 2, lower energy prices. And number 3, the result of using computers, and that made the American workers far more productive than we had been before. Clinton and the conservatives. Despite the improving economy, voter frustration with Clinton's healthcare plans helped Republicans win a resounding victory in the 1994 congressional elections. For the first time since the 1950s, think about that, that's over 4 decades, Republicans held a majority in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. So notice this change in 1994. For the first time, the grand old party, the Republicans, owned the Senate and the House. Notice they gained 54 House of Representative seats that election. That's what you call a red wave. Question, let's see, that is question number, what number is that? That is question number 74. Why were Republicans able to take control of both the House of Representatives and the Senate for the first time since the 1950s? Well, Americans were frustrated that Clinton's healthcare plan had not gotten passed by the Democrats. So they're like, if you can't get it done, maybe Republicans can get some stuff done. Newt Gingrich, pictured here, of Georgia, became Speaker of the House. Under his leadership, House Republicans drew up a, quote, contract with America. This set of proposed laws included reducing social spending and environmental regulations and slashing taxes. Question 75. Who became the Republican Speaker of the House after the 1994 congressional elections? Newt Gingrich. Question 77. 76. What were some of the key concepts of the contract with America? Number 1, reduce social spending. Number 2, reduce environmental regulations. Number 3, cut taxes. The president attacked many of the proposals as unfair to poor and middle-class Americans. After a bitter fight, he compromised with Congress on a plan to balance the federal budget by the year 2002. In fact, the economy grew so strongly that in 1998, the government reported a budget surplus. Look at that. Look this, where the spending actually was lower than our revenues. Oh, isn't that wonderful to think about? Wow. In fact, the economy grew so strongly, it was a surplus in which income exceeds spending. Over the next 2 years, the surplus grew even larger. Oh my, what a time that was when we actually made more money than we spent. That's the way it's supposed to be. All right, question number 77. How did President Clinton respond to the contract with America? He attacked it, and as many of the proposals he felt were unfair to the poor and the middle class. 78. What amazing thing happened to the United States economy in 1998 to 2000? We actually had a budget surplus. We actually brought more money than we spent. Question 79. How did Congress and Clinton agree to a common sense compromise on welfare reform? We haven't got to that yet, so let's switch the slide. Congress and Clinton also compromised on welfare reform. The government limited the length of time a person could receive welfare benefits. In this way, it hoped to encourage unemployed Americans to find jobs. So question 79. How did Congress and Clinton agree to a common sense compromise on welfare reform? Well, look at the phrase, welfare to work. The idea was, yes, we need welfare, but you don't want to use welfare as a lifelong concept. It's meant to help you get from one job to the next, not to be a crutch to spend your entire time on. That's what President Clinton and Congress agreed to, and I think that's a very common sense compromise on welfare reform. Impeachment and acquittal. Controversy engulfed Clinton's second term. Federal prosecutors investigated Clinton for real estate dealings while he was governor of Arkansas. Prosecutors found no evidence of law breaking. However, they did accuse the president of lying under oath about an improper relation with a White House intern, pictured here, Monica Lewinsky. Amid heated debate, the House voted to impeach President Clinton. For only the second time in history, the Senate tried a president. In February 1999, the Senate voted to acquit, or find not guilty, the president, and he continued in office until the end of his second term in 2001. So question number 80. Much like President Nixon, how did controversy and scandal engulf President Clinton's second term as president? Well, he was found to be lying. He said to the American people on TV, "I did not have relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky." He was lying. I mean, it got so bad we even started to debate what the word "is" meant. It was ridiculous. And so, question 81, for the second time in American history, what happened to President Clinton? He was the second president to go through the impeachment process. 82, what was the outcome of the impeachment process with President Clinton? The Senate voted to acquit or find him not guilty. Now, remember, the Senate votes on whether the president is guilty or not guilty, and it takes a 2/3 majority vote. Well, the Democrats had control of the Senate in 1999. That doesn't mean President Clinton was innocent. It just means the Senate did not find him guilty. Those are two completely different things. Well, thank you very much for watching. I do have a joke about President Clinton. On the late night talk show, Conan O'Brien said this joke about Bill Clinton. In a new interview, Hillary Clinton said her guilty pleasure is eating chocolate. Meanwhile, Bill Clinton said his guilty pleasure is being Bill Clinton. Oh my. Thank you and have a nice day.